Hi, this is Crystal from the Rain Dance Ranch, and I'm out in the field at one of my clients' houses. You may have seen some videos from this yard. This is the Oasis Garden, and I just fixed up these pots here. There were some spent flowers, and they just all needed to be groomed. And this is a Chrysandra plant that has lost all of its blooms, and I just deadheaded some of it, but I left a few of the seed pods on just for aesthetics and so I could talk about them. But also I do want to develop some seeds, and so I do have these over here, and these are all finished blooming near as I can tell. And so I've deadheaded, and hopefully we will get some new blooms on this. And I've kind of moved it so that it gets a little more sun, which is what the nursery who sold this to me recommended, because I've never dealt with this plant and I haven't hardly had time to even look into it from my own research outside of the nursery people. Anyways, so I'm real happy with the way this turned out. It's doing well, other than I'd like to see more flowers. We've got these polka dot plants which are doing well, but I'm finding that they're suffering, and I just can't be here all the time to protect them, and things are getting, we just literally hit the hardest, most brutal time of the summer to grow things in the Phoenix metropolitan desert. And so I just kind of want to keep these a little bit hit away from any direct sun and see how these are going to be able to take the direct sun, which actually isn't even really that direct, but it is dappled. But I think there is a stage where they will get slightly heavier sun. I need to spend a day here analyzing what's happening here. I just don't know exactly, and things tend to change over time as well. So one of the great things about gardening in pots in Phoenix is you can easily move them as the environmental conditions change. So this is what that plant looks like in bloom, and there was a lot more blooms on this too. But I'm just so happy that there still are some, because this is just beautiful. And the nursery told me that this should bloom all summer in deep shade, but it's looking like they do need like maybe the edge of shade or some dappled sun in the morning is probably the best. Although I don't know, I think this is getting more sun in the afternoon, I'm not sure. But whatever the case may be, this is the one that's blooming, and hopefully it will start putting on more blooms. And you can see here's the flower structure. It seems like they get about maybe 3 inches or so, maybe a little more, 3 to 4 inches. Let's hold one up. This is probably one of the longer ones, and I don't know, is that 3 or 4 inches? I don't know. Somewhere between 3 and 4 at least. Some of them are slightly smaller and expired. So this is probably 2, more like 2.5, probably not quite 3, or about 3. And then they just keep putting on blooms as the bottom ones fall off. And then all of a sudden they finish, and then they start going to seed. So I'm really looking forward to collecting some seeds on this thing, and I'm just in love with it. And it is a perennial, and it does not look good in the wintertime, I am told. So you have to kind of overwinter it, or just take it out of your highly visible areas and keep it in another location over the winter, and then bring it out for the summer, or probably bring it out in the spring and then it can live through the summer. We'll see how it goes. Now, one of the things that I've been doing, and I had spent quite a bit of time, not really a lot of time, but just as I was going along and they were readily available, I was adding this beautiful mulch of bougainvillea leaves, which most people think are flowers, but technically they're leaves, kind of like poinsettias and coleus. These are technically leaves, and then the flowers come in right here. But this is technically a leaf. Anyways, it makes great leaf mulch for a potted garden, because if you get an empty spot, you can just fill it in. And you need to fill it in, because if you know anything about mulch, it's a real good idea, especially in Phoenix in the summer. And I had all of these pots all along here were mulched really nice. And the other ones were pretty filled, so I didn't mulch them, but all these pots sort of started developing empty spots right away, and I just was, every time I came, I would add some of those leaves. And then the landscapers showed up last Friday, and they blew out all of the leaves. Like, this was totally filled in, and stuff started suffering and dying. And I don't know if it was I believe it was a combination of, because they blew this area out. And they broke some of the plants, which wasn't necessarily a bad thing, 100%, but the planter wasn't ready for that, because then everything underneath gets exposed. And they blew out all of my mulch, my bougainvillea mulch. And look at how actually I just added this back in. So unfortunately, if you've ever tried to garden in Phoenix, you know, with especially some kind of ornamental thing in pots, you're just gonna get some empty spots. And maybe I need to, until you maybe go a few years in one location and you figure out what plants you want to do, and you can start knowing which ones are really going to work for what you need in that area. And this is a real discovery for me, because I've never gardened here. And everything was done on the fly. And I feel like it's successful. And I warned them that things are going to suffer, that, they knew. But it's working out good in the end. I could analyze it to death. But really what I want to talk about is this bougainvillea mulch. And I am going to be instructing the landscapers and the homeowners that these need to be in here, and I do not want them blowing the stuff out. And the other thing is they're not going to be readily available anymore. Like, I'm so lucky that we even had a pile of bougainvillea leaves, because in the last month, every week that I come, they have the landscapers blow the bougainvillea leaves out of the yard, and then within 5 days, 3 to 4 days maybe even, I've got a pile of leaves at my disposal. Well, that pile of leaves is dwindling, so if they blow these out, I'm not going to have these leaves at my disposal, and they look super pretty. If you're going to have mulch in a garden that you want to be beautiful and successfully growing plants in Phoenix, you want the mulch. So here I added some mulch in here, and I wish I'd have taken a video of these before I added this mulch, because it just really makes it look pretty again, and it's good for the plants. It's such an amazing gift to have these bougainvillea leaves. Nature's confetti, I call it. And they do keep their color for a while, and even as they degrade, I think they still look attractive as a mulch. Of course, that's a matter of taste. And the problem as a designer that you have with these things is people aren't used to that. And so a lot of times people will reject ideas that they haven't seen done elsewhere. And you don't really see a lot of people using this or even recommending it for like a design business. As far as I know, I don't know, but it's not something I've seen a lot. And I've been looking. But as a designer, this is what I recommend that you do. Or even as a homeowner, if you've got a bougainvillea and then in the summertime you get these blank spots, and you're like, oh, okay, now I gotta squeeze something in there. What am I gonna do? It's July and everything dies, and it's not a good time to plant. This is just not the month to be planting most things. You can plant some things, but for what we've got going on here, it's just really not recommended, in my opinion, unless everything in the pot dies, right? And right now we've still got beauty in this pot, even though it doesn't cover the entire surface of the pot. And this is how this was oriented when I first put it over here. And there was one of these must have died and somebody cut it off, or it broke off. I don't know. I did not cut it off, but you can see right here, this like either broke off or got cut off. And I think maybe it was suffering and the landscapers cut it off. I have no idea. But I need to have a talk with them because the landscapers don't know what's going on. Now, I'm not saying it would be wrong. See, look, here's a dead leaf, so there might have been like something dead. To cut off the dead leaves like that, but I just really would prefer that they do not blow out this mulch because we're not going to be able to get it again. And it's very needed for this time of year and for what's happening. And it's an excellent solution for the aesthetics. See here, this was all, you could see a lot of this, and this was a geranium that, you know, they weren't flowering, but they were still a nice bit of green up until now. I'll show you some other ones that they're ready to be cut back. They're just not attractive anymore. But they stayed attractive from whenever the time is that they planted them, which was probably in the spring. I didn't ask them. They could have planted them last fall. But they were a nice bit of greenery. But now those are expiring because that's what they do in the summer. And I don't know if I can keep them alive. Will they come back in the winter? And will they be vigorous and beautiful? I don't know, because a lot of annuals will perennialize in some areas, or you might be able to get a couple years out of them. It's not unheard of. I know you can do that with petunias. But anyways, okay, so here you can see what pots look like. This was all, when I first planted this, these plants were all more vigorous. I've suffered a loss over here. And so now look at, you can see all this dirt. It looks real sparse. Or you can see the top of the soil in the pot. It looks real sparse. These guys are suffering. I just really need to not do mandevilla because I just can't seem to get them right. I mean, I'm going to continue to try to get these right, but I'm not buying any more until I can figure this out. And it's not really high on my priority list for everything I've got going on. So I'm not going to be, if these fail, I'm not going to buy these again for a while. But if I can keep these alive, then I'll know when to use them in the future, because they are quite beautiful and they're vigorous bloomers in other people's climates at certain times of the year. I just, Phoenix is a mystery to me. And this is the second time that, depending on how you look at it, this is the second or third time I've attempted to grow these. Anyways, so I'm going to be putting bougainvillea. I'm going to be trimming these up. I haven't touched these yet today. I'm going to be trimming these up and making them look prettier. Maybe you can't really see, but look at how this just does not look good, right? I'm not happy with this. I'm probably going to top these off, pinch. Got to get the deads. I'm going to fill in with bougainvillea leaves until further notice. So any pot that just has a lot of soil showing is going to get the bougainvillea leaves, like right there, right there. This could use a little. This could use a little. This one is a goner here, but I'm not going to be addressing that today. I actually think it still looks pretty. So I don't know how much I'm going to be able to cover. See, we've got some empty spots here. Look at this big. I had this all filled in with leaves, and they came and blew it out. And like as soon as they blew it out, everything just went downhill fast. And But I do think it's a combination of the fact that we just hit the brutal season, and then they put the plants in shock by removing their skin, the skin to their roots. That's kind of the way I look at mulch. It's the skin to the roots of a plant, to some degree. It's part of the skin. So just a little bummed out about this, but lessons learned, and that's what I'm doing here. I just need to know what to make sure what information needs to be conveyed to people so this doesn't happen again. That I lose my mulch. It's like losing your lunch. Okay. So, these are still looking pretty good. One other thing I want to say is these people had a company come out and identify their growing zones, and they made this growing zone map, and it looks like, I'm not really sure what it's not real clear to me what their mapping system means, but one thing that looks abundantly clear, and I'm pretty confident about, is that anything that they showed that was in a green color is a good growing spot, and they identified this as a good growing spot, and now I'm they are right. But there's still some considerations out here because we get a lot of sun, so we're just not going to be able to grow these beauties. These really need to be in the deep shade with just a little bit of speckled sun here and there. And that's working for these, and I couldn't be happier. But there's no way that those ferns can live out there. Absolutely none. But the ferns are just I think was the best investment we made for this garden. Even though they're not the color that she wants, but she needs some green that's going throughout here that's a permanent green. And then areas where she can add color. So in the fall, I'm hoping to be able to identify a lot more color plants, and I intend to use a lot of petunia in here. And she does like the geranium, so no problem putting in more geraniums. Okay, but overall, I am really happy with how this is going, even though there's been some mistakes made, or whatever you want to call it. That's how you have to get to know a garden space, and the first time around is a big experiment, really. And I am ready to rock and roll with this baby. So over here, I'm going to be focusing on an herb garden, and just can't wait to get on that. I feel like there's more I could say, but yeah, bougainvillea mulch. Love the bougainvillea mulch. It just makes everything look prettier. Especially when you've got a plant that looks all right already, or you've got a container that pretty much looks all right, and then you add these in, and it doesn't look like something died there. And I'm going to try to let these go one more week. I still think they're pretty, even though they're starting to look expired. So we're going to let those ride just a little longer. There was something else like that. I don't know. All right, well, thanks for watching. Crystal from the Rain Dance Ranch, out in the field. When it rains, go out and dance.